Hi Year 10, Mr. Tapley here to walk you through your next lesson of Year 10 Geography in Week 7 of Term 2. This week we are looking at pollution, so this is the last topic of environmental change that we will be looking at before our CAT. So in Week 7 now, finish up with pollution. Week 8 we will be introducing the CAT, and then we'll be aiming to finish the CAT by the end of Week 9. That's the current plan. I should say also, before I get too far into this video, that this video lecture and the slide activities within and the textbook are designed for a double period. So don't stress if you can't finish it in one lesson. I'll make it really clear in the lesson plan as well for this lesson and then the next lesson that these activities are for a double period. But if you have any questions, please let me know. So our learning intention this lesson is to develop our understanding of the causes, so what causes pollution, and then the consequences, so what is the impact of pollution. And our success criteria is to explain the environmental impact of land, air, and water pollution around the world. Those are the big three kind of categories that we break down or classify pollution into. So, what is pollution? What's the definition? Well, pollution can be defined as any substance, so anything that's being released into the environment that has a harmful or poisonous effect. So it's any sort of negative substance being released into the environment that's causing the environment harm. It's not helpful, it is poisonous. It's the opposite of helpful. So you can see down here, we've got an example of land pollution, or the rubbish being thrown away just onto the land outside it looks like a forest. We've got an example of air pollution there, some smoke coming up from some big factories in a city, and then we've got water pollution over here. It looks like plastic pollution in a lake or an ocean. So the global biodiversity and the ecological services provided in different environments are all negatively impacted by human activities that create short and or long-term pollution. So the two big things that the environment are doing for us, that biodiversity and the ecological services they do for humans, are all being impacted by both short and then long-term pollution. So you can see that for land, air, and water, I provided a little, just another 2-3 minute video trying to give you an example about the specific type of pollution that we're looking at on that slide. So feel free to view those videos there while you're going through the slides or after you finish up with the slides if you need a bit more information or a bit more clarity on something. So yeah, the first type of pollution that we're looking at is probably the one you guys are most familiar with because you can see the impact of it, is land pollution. So land pollution can occur through the use of harmful pesticides. So pesticides are these chemicals that we use in farming and agriculture to kill insects so they don't ruin our crops, ruin our food, but also in fertilizers. So again, chemicals that we're putting into the ground to help our food grow. It's actually harming the environment. We get some nice food out of it, but we are causing long-term pollution to the environment. And other examples of land pollution, soil contamination. So again, soil is important. It's the dirt, it's the ground, and we need that to be healthy and not contaminated. Otherwise, we can't grow food in it. If we don't get food, we get very angry, very unhappy. Land degradation. So if you guys have seen videos of like a house on a beach cliff or a house in just the middle of a field, and the land just collapses away, like this cliff just collapses, it disappears, that's because of land degradation. So because of pollution, the quality, the strength of the land, the structure, the stability has just kind of deteriorated to the point that it just be like poke and it just collapses. And then another type of land pollution, another example, is mining. Mining is a very big, has a big impact on the quality and the health of our land. So the environmental impact of this pollution includes the contamination of groundwater used as drinking water. You mess with the land, the ground, a lot of our water doesn't come out from the sky, it comes from underground, groundwater. And if you mess with the land, you're going to contaminate, you're slowly going to poison that water that we use to drink. That's a bad impact. The loss of productivity and decline in fertility of farmland. So again, a lot of our farm that you see in stores, in restaurants, and takeaway places, that's coming from these farms way out in the countryside. So you don't really see the impact of land pollution to those farms, but you will feel the impact if those farms are no longer able to produce food. Land degradation contributes to climate change, as forests absorb CO2 much more effectively than a wasteland. What I'm getting at there is land pollution can impact the trees, impact forest environments. And if those forests, which get their nutrients, get their food from the soil, if that land is destroyed, those trees will be destroyed, and those things that are providing us with oxygen and taking away CO2 are no longer working. So it's going to impact climate change. It's going to impact our air quality. And then soil erosion increases vulnerability to natural disasters and extreme weather. When you see things about like massive landslides, it's because the land has become such crappy quality that just a gust of wind from, let's say, a storm or a hurricane or a cyclone or whatever will cause that land to just whoosh, and it crushes roads, it crushes towns, cities, people. So we become much more vulnerable to extreme weather, which is going to happen more often because of climate change. So that's land pollution. And again, if you want another example of what land pollution actually looks like, and it doesn't have to be narrated by Mr. Tapley, I recommend you look at that video there. It talks about the impact of coal mining. Bunk. Air pollution. Air pollution is the contamination of the atmosphere through the release of harmful gases. This pollution can affect the air quality in neighborhoods and cities, leading to medical issues for inhabitants of these regions. Cancer, heart disease, respiratory failure, so those are some of the negative impacts of air pollution and having very low air quality. It's very appropriate with everyone walking around wearing face masks, but in some cities they were wearing those face masks before coronavirus, before COVID-19, just because the air quality was so bad, it was actually hurting them to go outside and breathe in the air of their city or their village or their town or wherever. And I'm sure if anyone in this class has asthma, they will attest to the impact of really crappy air quality on their health. So it can cause those very serious, very fatal health concerns like cancer, heart disease, respiratory failure. It's estimated that over 4 million premature deaths were caused by air pollution in 2016. That was the most recent statistic I could find from our textbook. So what they're saying there is that there are 4 million people, over 4 million people, who could have continued living, who could have lived for, another year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but they died prematurely. They died earlier than what they should have because the air quality was bad, because of air pollution, which I just found was a very alarming statistic. Anyway, at a global scale, greenhouse gases are obviously connected to air pollution, and they contribute to climate change, to smog, and to a phenomenon known as acid rain. These microscopic particles in the air can also change or deplete nutrients in soils and rivers, damage forests and crops. Again, air is important to almost everything in the world, being able to grow and to live healthily and happily, to our environments, to our humans, to our animals, to our food. So the air pollution that we have in the world is a very negative impact, short-term, immediate, and long-term, which is why it's important that we address it and that we understand it. And again, you got a quick little video up there talking about air pollution. Water pollution. Very appropriate, as Australia is an island, so it's probably important that we keep our water healthy. Water pollution is the contamination of rivers, lakes, wetlands, which are like these kind of like swampy type regions, which you don't really see much in Glen Waverley, but anyway, and oceans. Again, through the release of harmful substances, that poisonous microscopic substances, or not microscopic if you're looking at plastic pollution, and all those substances are caused by human activities, unfortunately, either on the water or near the water. So you've got all those big bloody cruise ships going around spreading coronavirus. They're actually causing water pollution because they're driving through the water, sailing through the water. I was about to say swimming. They're sailing through the water and they're causing pollution. Shipping, so transporting massive freights of goods that they're being transported from Australia to other countries or vice versa. All that activity in the water is causing pollution. Deep sea oil drilling is also causing pollution. And then even activities on the land can lead to water pollution because the sewage systems, the rivers, that will take pollution from the land out to the ocean. So you've got litter, rubbish, you've got chemicals, sewage, all being released into the waterways, causing widespread pollution because all that water is connected. So if I've dropped something, I've actually got the Yarra River outside my living room window. So if I drop something in the Yarra and you'll wait for 5 days or 10 days, you probably find it in the CBD. So unfortunately, because our water is connected, pollution, even on the land, can cause water pollution. And what is the impact of water pollution? Well, we lose a clean, safe, and drinking water source. That's important. Fish and other animals will decline in health and population. Farming impact as well can lead to food shortages and famines. Farming is a very water intensive endeavor. It's a very thirsty activity. So if you don't have enough water, that's going to lead to poor farming, poor food shortages, and famine. And also coastal degradation and marine dead zones. We actually learn about marine dead zones a bit later on, so I won't talk about it in too much detail. Coastal degradation is basically the beaches kind of just like fading away into nothingness until the beach kind of actually moves in like several kilometers inland. So if you don't live by the beach now, if water pollution continues, you might live by the beach in a few years. Marine dead zones are really cool though. Again, I won't go into too much detail about it, but basically the pollution is so bad that nothing can grow. It's like a black hole in the middle of the ocean. Like nothing can grow there. It's just this do not enter. If you go in there, it dies. Anyway, moving on. Oh, that diagram. The diagram shows a bit of what I was just saying in a nice little picture format. And I've actually gotten that from your textbook, so you can see it in a bit more detail. But it just shows different examples of water pollution and how it's all connected. Cool. Finished it on up. So what you're doing for this double period, guys, is completing the following questions and activities in your digital notebook. After reading, I should stress, after reading, don't just rely on your prior knowledge or on the slides or those videos I put up there. After you've read these 6 pages, the 3 sets of 2 pages there, complete these questions in your textbook. So don't go and complete the 20 textbook questions that are on those pages. You're completing these 5 questions in the slides using the information from these textbook sections there, which I will show to you first. So we've got 56 and 57. They're all in Chapter 1, which is in Google Classroom and Compass. So 56 and 57 kind of gives you a basic overview of pollution. So you can see they talk about air, water, land. They've got a little map here. So that should give you some information about pollution. 62 and 63 talks specifically about land pollution, so degrading the land, soil erosion, ecosystem decline. Gives you an example of Australia. And then the final set of pages talks about water pollution. So you can see that's where that diagram came from. And it talks about the different types of water pollution, so physical water pollution, chemical water pollution, and biological water pollution. And that's related to a question in the slides, actually, which I'll go over now. So question 1 that you'll be completing in your digital notebook. Define and provide examples of the 3 main forms of pollution. These don't need to be specific examples as in pollution in the blank river or land pollution in this country. Just examples of the 3 main types of pollution that we discussed in the slides and the textbook. Question 2. Which form of pollution do you believe has the greatest impact on the environment and the ecological services provided to humanity, and why? So no wrong answers in that question there. It's your opinion I'm asking for. So looking at land, air, and water, what we've looked at in the slides and in the textbook, which one do you think has the greatest negative impact on the environment and all the ecological services they provide us with? Question 3. Examining source 1.19 on page 57, describe the distribution of severe air pollution. So when they say examine source, usually in the textbook it's going to refer to like a map or a graph, a big picture. So I'll show you what that picture looks like. And looking at source 1.19 on page 57, what you're doing is describing where severe air pollution is located. So kind of like a PQE response there, but you don't have to do like a full PQE big ass paragraph, just like a little mini paragraph. So page 56, 57, source 1.19 is right there. I'll zoom in a bit so you can see. Oof, very bright. So you can see it's showing a world map of global distribution of pollution, and it's showing you, get out of the way cursor, polluted air, with this brown color here, polluted sea. I wish that little cursor didn't pop up every time. And what I'm looking for is severe air pollution for that question. So I'm looking for that brown little color there. And you're going to have to scroll through your map and see where you can find some of that information. Some of it is unfortunately covered up by acid rain, those black lines. But for example, I can see some around here. I can see some over here, USA represent. And that's what you're doing for question 3. Question 4. Define land degradation. What does that mean? And explain why land degradation is a concern for people living in Australia. So you can see as I've gone through these questions as well, it's kind of corresponding to the different textbook sections. So these first couple of questions, first 3, are related to those 2 pages there. Question 4 is looking at land degradation, which is in that set of pages there. And then question 5 is obviously looking at water pollution. But anyway, question 4, what is land degradation and why is it a concern for Australia? And if you go back to those pages, you can see that question 4 on page 63, they focus on Australia in this little chapter here. So you don't have to do any external research. All the information for that question is in this specific chapter. And then finally, question 5, examine source 1.61, which is actually this one here. If you don't want to go to the textbook, you can use this from the slides. So looking at that diagram there, classify human activities as physical, chemical, or biological. So I mentioned this before, but when they talk about water pollution in this chapter here, they differentiate between all these things in this diagram here. Things like, so I'll say household waste. Household waste is either going to be physical, so it's something physical that you can hold in your hand, say this is physical pollution. It's going to be chemical, so it's going to be like a chemical thing, like oil, fertilizer, pesticides, etc. Or to be biological, so it's a living thing, so it's a bacteria, parasites, etc., etc. So what you need to do for that question 5, is look at the different things being listed here, like household waste, pesticides, oil pollution, and you just need to write a little list and classify, okay, so this one is physical, so I might put a P next to it, or this one is chemical, so I've got a C next to it. You could take like a screenshot of this diagram and then just write in like a C, P, B, something like that. So yeah, that's what you're doing for the, again, double period, guys, so don't freak out if you can't get this done in one period. I recommend, it's entirely up to you, you know how you learn best, but I recommend watching the video. You can watch those mini videos as well, top right. Read through the questions, maybe in the first half of our double, and then the second half, have a crack at these questions. Some people will finish that a bit quicker, some people will take a bit longer. It's entirely up to you how you do it. You might want to try and smash out the first 2 questions and then come to 3, 4, 5 in the second half of our double. I'd probably recommend when you start the second half of the period though, or the second half of the double, to just very quickly buzz through the slides again so you can remind yourself what we're looking at. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can always let me know via email or leave a comment in Google Classroom. And yeah, best of luck, guys. Cheers.